Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Comic Book Nostalgia. I'm CB Nostalgia, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the Coven of Chaos. Well, as many of you know, the Agatha Harkness spin-off series got a release window this weekend at Comic-Con, and although we'll have to wait a couple years, that really wasn't the big news. The big news with the series was the change in the name. It actually went from House of Harkness to Coven of Chaos, which suggests a lot, and I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about it and what it could mean for the MCU. It really does feel we might be getting quite a few more witches inside Marvel's magical universe. I also have to wonder, because it's called Coven of Chaos, if chaos magic is going to play a central element in this. Wanda Maximoff's tie to chaos magic, the Darkhold, and Chthon was a huge part of her arc, and this might be directly spawning from that. That's something to consider when we start talking about which other witch characters will be part of the show. Now, we really haven't heard hiding her hair from Agatha since WandaVision. Catherine Hahn's portrayal of the character was a huge hit with fans, but unfortunately for her, she ended up pretty much brainwashed by Wanda and sentenced to live in Westview, which felt like hell to Agatha. Now, she was the villain of the story, technically. Technically, Wanda was the villain of the story, but her fate was sympathetic to fans. And to be fair, she did give us all those warnings about how dangerous the Scarlet Witch was. She wasn't wrong. Now, this series has been inbound for quite a while, and obviously there's been planning behind the scenes. And it appears they really have made some changes. Now, the name is now Coven of Chaos, which suggests a coven or a group of witches. We saw multiple witches in that flashback scene in WandaVision, so obviously this portion of the magical MCU has been established going back pretty far. Now, characters like Morgan Le Fay in Marvel Comics fit this pretty perfectly, so this makes me wonder if we could be seeing a lot more witches in the MCU, and if we are, who? Now, the show is placed in a point in time that it makes me wonder what's going on as a follow-up to Multiverse of Madness. If we're talking about potential other witches in the MCU, Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch, is the most obvious, and her rather ambiguous death at the end of Multiverse of Madness suggests to me there's probably more story to be told. I'm wondering if, since Agatha was introduced in Wanda's series, if Wanda could reappear in Agatha's series. This would make a lot of logical sense and could totally work as a narrative for the whole show, re-establishing Wanda as a hero and bringing her back to the MCU. But there are a lot of other witch characters that would fit nicely in a show called Coven of Chaos. One of the first ones that comes to mind for me is Arcanna Jones. Now, typically, she's not part of the 616, but she is part of the Squadron Supreme, something many fans want to see. And during WandaVision, there was a running theory, we had a video on this channel, that one of the characters in the show was actually Arcanna. Many of us, yours truly included, believed that Dottie was Arcanna Jones of the Squadron Supreme. But as we finished the series out, we realized that wasn't the case, and she was basically just another Muggle. That's sort of a bummer, because the actress portraying the character would have made a great Arcanna Jones, and we'll have to wait and see what happens, but this is one of those characters I would expect to appear. Now, another witch that could be part of this series could be Jennifer Kale. Now, in the comics, her training was based on a magical tome, the Tome of Zirid-Na, and that book itself could be part of the series. We'll have to wait and see. She is an interesting character because she has been tutored by other sorcerers, but she's also self-taught. Now, in the comics, she can fire magical bolts, form shields, open dimensional portals, mesmerize people, teleport herself, and cast all kinds of magical spells that are pretty classic to the archetype of the character. Now, she was actually in a series with several other witches a couple of years ago. It was simply called Witches, and one of those characters was Topaz. Now, if you don't know who Topaz is, she is another one of Marvel's magical characters, and she is a mystic with fairly exceptional empathic, telepathic, and telekinetic powers. She can also magnify or diminish people's emotions, heal injuries, and infuse people with life energy, making her fairly unique amongst the other sorceresses. She can also serve as a familiar to her fellow magic users, helping them focus and magnify their magical abilities. Now, in the comics, she has taken on two different forms. One is a blonde European and one is a brunette Indian. So if she does show up in the series, we'll have to wait and see what she looks like. The final character in that Witches series was Satanna Helstrom. Now, that particular character was part of the Helstrom series over on Hulu, and in the comics, she is the sister of Damien Helstrom. Now, both children from the comics are half demon, half human. Satanna is technically a succubus, and classically in the comics, they were referred to as the children of Satan, although later it was retconned as Marduk Curious. Her powers and abilities are kind of based on her bloodline, and she has some really kind of crazy and dark powers, including the ability to feed on people's psychic energy, manipulate magical forces, levitation, interdimensional teleportation, and she can also project concussive bolts of soul fire, all of which would be pretty cool as part of the series. Additionally, unlike some of these other characters, she has superhuman strength due to her demon heritage, making her quite the unique and powerful witch. Now, the final character that could be part of this is one we actually saw on screen recently in New Mutants, and that's Ileana Rasputa, aka Magic. Now, typically, she's part of the New Mutants, but I really don't think Marvel would have much of a problem putting her in the show. It would be a great place to introduce a mutant character, and her mutant ability is the ability to manipulate mystical energy. She has a full cadre of sorcery powers, including energy manipulation, astral projection, scrying, and even summoning of various creatures, which in the comics has been pretty cool over time. She can also project mystical armor around herself, and has the mutant ability of creating stepping discs, which allow herself and others to teleport across interstellar distances. This would be a pretty cool facilitator for storytelling inside the MCU, and something I totally could see Marvel trying to take advantage of. She would totally make a great addition to this potential show. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other magic-using witches inside the MCU. These were just a couple that I think would fit really well in a project like this, and would be the kind of world-building Marvel is known for. Now, obviously, we have a long time before the Agatha Harkness spin-off comes out, so we're going to be getting a lot more details between now and then. If this is a show that you're really into, I would recommend you hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to try to bring you all the details as they hit, and I think this is going to be something a bit different. But until we know more, what do you guys think? Do you think the changing of the name of House of Harkness to Coven of Chaos indicates something involving Wanda Maximoff? And what other witch characters would you like to see be part of the show? Sound off in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you hit like, click subscribe, and if you don't ring that bell, you're not getting any updates. Peace.